Hi everyone, welcome back for week 2. We are going over auditory today, so here we go. So this is our flyer for speaking sentences. Week 1 was last week and we covered vision, so you can check our YouTube channel or our Facebook for that video of the live recording. This week is auditory, so we'll be going through the system and also doing some learning activities for it, and then next week will be smell and taste together. So make sure you come back to see that one.
And like Beth said, today our sense is auditory, which is our ability to hear. And like vision, we talked about last week, you have the ability to see what is in front of you, but vision is what gives you that comprehension of what you are seeing. So it's kind of the same concept as hearing. Hearing is our ability to receive sounds from our environment, and then the interpretation and comprehension of those sounds is acquired through like a learning process as we engage with our environment. So if I were to define auditory, I would define it as the body's ability to process sounds and gather information from our surroundings. And it isn't simply the ability to hear, but our ability to listen, which gives us that understanding as we interact. And fun fact, our ability to hear is further than where our eyes can see. So that just kind of goes back to that same concept, while using all of our senses together is super important as we navigate, through our daily activities. And sound, as you can see on here, our hearing range is from 16 to 2,000 plus decibels. So that is how sound is measured. And just to give you like some examples, a whisper is about 30 decibels. And then a normal conversation where me and Beth may be talking to each other is about 60 decibels. And then a motorcycle running is about 95 decibels. So anything over 70 and even from 120 range can cause damage or harm our hearing.
All right, so we're just going to go into a little tidbit of the anatomy of the ear. I know y'all probably don't want to know a whole lot about it. So this is the ear. So the outside is what we see. So sound travels from the outside through the ear canal, vibrates the eardrum, which then causes sound to go into the middle ear. And then the inner ear moves, and the little hairs and all that fluid moves and stimulates the auditory nerve. So that's that yellow thing going out of the inner ear. So that is then going to the brain, and that's how we perceive auditory sounds. So the inner ear is a very important part of the sensory system. We will talk about this some more when we talk about vestibular, but just to understand auditory, this is the basic layout of what the ear is and how sound goes from the outside to the inside for our brain to perceive it.
So now that Beth has given you a little bit of anatomy background, I kind of want to talk about the functioning and the importance of our auditory system. We receive auditory input, like she was saying, from our surroundings, and it goes through our ears. So we can understand where the sound is coming from, so where it's located in relation to us. So if it's coming from a far distance or if it's close, and that kind of goes hand in hand with our safety. So like when we know that a sound is close and we need to prepare our body for what is to come, it kind of lets you know where that sound is coming from to get prepared to respond. And children learn to speak and understand by the sounds that they hear. So that's why during infancy, you will hear a doctor maybe say it's really important to talk to them, even though they're probably not going to talk back, but it's helping that language development. And so then children, they learn to speak by that. And also, if you see dysfunction, that can lead to difficulty with listening while they're in class, reading, and their overall academic achievement, and even social interaction skills.
All right, so a little bit about the development of auditory systems. While the basic abilities are developed at birth and you're able to hear sounds at birth, the maturation and maturity of sound is carried out throughout the teenage years. So not only do you have it when you're born, but it continues to develop up until you're a teenager. It usually involves the auditory pathways within the brain. It matures, it grows new connections, all that. But non-auditory changes such as attention, memory, and cognition all play a part and impact the way that the auditory system develops. So just like what Lexi was saying, the cognition, like hearing the language development from your parents is so important to help develop those pathways, especially when you're a very young child, because it plays such a big impact on the system.
Yes, and these stages can kind of be understood as like coding the information, then listening, so getting those listening skills as you mature, and then actually being flexible with your hearing. So having the flexibility to tune out what's important and what's not. So now we're going to talk a little bit about some dysfunction. So if your child is having some auditory processing deficits, you may see them craving loud or repetitive noises. They may be overwhelmed by our everyday noises that we hear, or they may be unable to detect sounds in their environment. So what that might look like is they may be unaware of the sound, where it's coming from. They have trouble discriminating between words that have similar sounds, such as bear and boar. So that may affect reading. And then they may have the ability not to pay attention to one or more sounds at the same time. And they may have trouble putting their thoughts into verbal or written form. And then like that would kind of go in hand with our ability to read out loud. So during class, where you might see some of those deficits.
So the impact of the auditory function, what does it look like? So if your child is under responsive, so we covered these terms last week. So if you can't remember what this means that they have a lower threshold, they have a higher threshold so they don't register a lot of times with it. So that means the child doesn't respond to sounds. So you could call them from another room and they constantly do not come. They constantly do not register that somebody's talking to them. It's not that they have a hearing impairment. So I wanted to clarify. The sensory system is separate from hearing impairment. So a hearing impairment is when there's a neurological or structural dysfunction. So that's when the structures of the ear do not work. However, what we're talking about is the way that the brain interprets these auditory sounds. So that sensory processing definition we covered last week. So it's not that your child can't hear you if they're unresponsive, it's that their brain's not understanding that somebody's talking to them. And also they may talk slower than peers. So their receptive language, that hearing, is slower, so then they may produce speech slower. They turn up media very loud, they can't hear it. They sit very close to the TV, or they turn the music up, turn TVs up. They may have difficulty following directions. So they're getting the input through that ear, but the brain's not processing. So multi-step directions, like 2 or 3 step directions, may be challenging for them. They may need simple, like, go do this. Okay, now do this. It may be easier to break it down for that child that way. They also may miss milestones. So this can be fine motor, gross motor, language development, cognitive development. Any of those milestones can be affected with sensory processing challenges due to hearing.
And like Beth was saying, it's not that they cannot hear, but their brain does not have the ability to process what they are hearing. So you may see the word seeker. So they may be seeking the noise. So they may seek a loud or a busy environment. Like she said, they want to sit close to the TV. They may be speaking loud. They may want to hear like clapping, tapping, clicking, toys of that nature. And then they might prefer to have like constant noise in the background. So those are just some examples of what an under-responsive or a seeker may look like.
All right, so now an over-responsive child. So this is someone whose threshold is very low for auditory. So the sounds meets that threshold faster than someone who's under-responsive. So they appear distressed by the vacuum turning on. They're easily distracted by background noise. It doesn't take a whole lot of sound for them to detect it. They ask about sounds such as the air conditioning turning on, the sound of fluorescent lights, like lights tickering. They can hear those very easily. Noises people typically make out of tune. They have difficulty concentrating when people are talking because they hear all these other background noises. Also, a child who is over-responsive may cover their ears a lot. So just like this little boy in the picture, he is very sensitive, or he may be very sensitive to noises. So to avoid that, he's covering his ears because it's hurting him.
And so this kind of goes back to those terms where this one may be an avoider. So they're going to avoid sounds because their threshold is met at a way quicker level than a normal child. And so what you might see is they may leave the environment to go find like their safe space, which may be like a quiet, you know, smaller, condensed, kind of giving them that comfort to like drown out the noise, if you will. They'll frequently close their ears, and they become very distracted by, you know, simple noises that we are so accustomed to like tuning out every day, which goes back to that developmental process of like the flexibility of being able to tune in and not worry about what's going on behind you. And they may engage in repetitive self-soothing activities such as rocking or chewing to kind of calm in order to meet that need.
So we have embedded some case study examples. We didn't have those last week, but we're going to have those after this week. So that way y'all can get a basic view and understanding of what this child actually may look like. So this is a 3-year-old. He is self-absorbed and pays little attention to most sounds and voices. One day, he surprises his father as they stroll around the block. He alerts instantly when a neighbor's dog, barking fiercely, bolts to the end of his chain. Rather than becoming alarmed, he grins. He wants to get closer and tugs on his father's hand, but his father wants to protect him and without discussion tugs him away. So to break down this case study a little bit, this little boy is under-responsive. It says that he doesn't, you know, pay attention to what people are saying typically. Things typically go beyond him, has to be told a couple times, you know, hey, I'm talking to you. However, in this instant, the barks of the dog met that auditory threshold. So he was able to detect that there was a dog, and he liked the noise because it met that threshold. So that's kind of what's going on in this case. Yes. So the next one is an 11-year-old. She has difficulty processing auditory sensations. She can hear well, so that goes, you know, back to it's not the structural damage, it's the sensory processing. But has trouble using what she hears to relate to others. Her receptive language is poor, so that's that auditory information going in. For instance, her mother sends her to the store for broccoli, orange juice with no pulp, and chicken wings. She returns with broccoli, yes, but orange juice with pulp and no chicken wings. So she, just like I was mentioning earlier, that 3-step direction was challenging for her. She got the first one on the list correct, but those other 2 were a little too hard for her. Her expressive language is also poor. Conversations with classmates are terse because putting thoughts into words is a struggle. So like Lexi was mentioning before, she's having a hard time communicating with her peers because she has a hard time putting those thoughts into the words. So it not only affects the input, but also the output of language. At dinner, when it's her turn to talk about her day, her reports are short, and no one in the family knows how to pursue a full answer. So this is a little bit of a snippet of what an older child may look like if they're having challenges with auditory processing. Okay, so that was the basic information about the auditory sensory system. So we're going to dive right into a learning activity. So while we were looking up different auditory learning activities, we found some fun ones. So this is the paper plate dance. So how to do this? You grab some paper plates, you turn on some music or a dancing video. It's a great and easy way to incorporate auditory sensations into movement. You can do movements overhead, each side, down low, so you can get really creative with this. So we have an example we're going to do together in just a minute, but I also wanted to mention rhythm sticks. So you can have drum sticks and beat them together, or sticks from outside if you want to do that, you know, and there can be a leader and the followers, and you can do it kind of like a Simon Says type thing, follow me in a rhythmic movement. So that way you're hearing those auditory sounds and incorporating it into the activity. So I have a little video that we're going to follow. Let me get to it. All right. So we're going to stand up and we're going to all do it together. You ready?
tell me when
Yay! So that was a quick and easy example. This was with older people, so this goes to show you that it's not just with kids that you can do that. So you can see in the video, she would speed up and slow down. So you have to be listening and paying attention to visually, so what we covered last week, and auditory to know what movements you should be doing. So it's a great way to incorporate a multisensory approach with vision, auditory, and movement. So that's a fun one. You just have to have some paper plates and some music or a video. So there's not much to do at home. So we encourage you to try that. Lexi also had a great idea too with Baby Shark.
Yes. So we all know that children love the Baby Shark tune, and that is such a great and catchy tune because of the repetitiveness that it goes through. You can take the paper plates, you can do your hands, as long as you're getting that sound incorporated. And we really, through this whole process, are trying to encourage you all to do things that you have at home and that are easy to incorporate into your routine. So that is really the whole purpose of what we are trying to do for you all. And like we say all the time, if you have any questions, please feel free to always email us and stay in contact. We are here for you, and we just are trying to learn this all together.
Yeah. So a couple more slides. So we just did the video. So these are some more activities to use at home. So Lexi mentioned Baby Shark, so that's another great one that you can try. I listed some modifications. So some typical modifications that we see at therapy clinics are noise canceling headphones or earplugs for children who are oversensitive to auditory sounds. However, I want to add a disclaimer. Make sure you talk to your therapist that if these would be appropriate for your child before you go buy them. There's some that's not too expensive on Amazon, about $10 or so, but we highly suggest talking to your therapist to see what would be best for them. You can also play music while completing homework. So for some people who are undersensitive, this gives them an extra sensory add to it. You can play some Mozart or whatever kind of like low tone steady music. For me, I get distracted by that music, so I do better in quieter environments when I'm studying or doing homework or stuff like that. Musical instruments are a great idea. So I mentioned the rhythm sticks, but playing any type of music like kids' pianos or the xylophone or all those fun instruments that you have as a kid. That's a great way to promote some auditory sensations. Noisemakers, so you've seen those at like New Year's celebrations, the little horns you blow in, or like the clappers, those are fun, usually sold at like the Dollar Tree. So they would be a good way to incorporate some sound into daily routine. Clapping is an easy one. So when you're singing a song, you can also add a beat to it. So with Baby Shark, that's a good one. Or with the Wheels on the Bus, like whatever your child or your adolescent likes, you can add auditory sound into it. Simon Says is a great one. So I alluded to this earlier, but this incorporates them being able to see, hear, and then move based on their sensory. So this helps with sensory processing. They're able to take that stimuli and then do it. So this is a good one to do. You can do all kinds of things with Simon Says. You can do motor movements with like your arms, your legs, or you can do noises. That would be another good one. The rhythm sticks, so rhythmic music and completing motor activities, and also a localization or discrimination activity. So being able to localize where that noise is coming from. So if instead of playing hide and seek, you could have somebody go into another room and make a noise, and then the child has to guess which room they were in. Or I saw a cool activity where you put either beans or rice or anything else you have at home into a little jar and shake it with their eyes closed, and they have to try to guess what's in the jar. So these are some things that you could do at home if you're bored on the afternoon, or have an extra Saturday time that you would like to add some of these things into, these are some great activities. So that is all that we have for you today. Our email is listed up here, muspeakingsenses@gmail.com. And we also have a Facebook page called Speaking Senses. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to either our email or our Facebook page. We will be quick to get back to you. And next week, don't forget, we're talking about smell and taste. So we hope that you come back to see us and hear some more and learn about our senses and how they impact our daily life.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.